Nearly everyone's heard of the T-virus. The name alone is basically global shorthand for zombies. But the true story behind the T-virus has almost nothing to do with fiction. It began with a rare African flower, 3 ambitious scientists, and a pharmaceutical company hiding the darkest secret in modern science. What drove Oswald Spencer, Edward Ashford, and James Marcus to risk everything and unleash something that changed the world forever? The real origins of the T-virus are stranger and more dangerous than the games ever dared to show, and what came out of that first vial in 1977 still echoes today. But how did a simple virus end up rewriting pop culture and causing real fear across the globe? The answers start deep underground, far away from the legends you think you know. Zombies, biohazards, viral outbreaks. These days, the T-virus is almost a household name, even if you've never picked up a controller. It's the punchline for every lab leak joke, the shorthand for any story where the dead start walking and the world goes sideways. You'll spot it in memes, movie scripts, and even the odd late-night news segment about new viruses. The T-virus has become a kind of modern folklore, equal parts urban legend and scientific nightmare, tucked right next to UFOs and Bigfoot in the pop culture attic. But what's wild is how this fictional virus managed to leap out of the game and infect the real world's imagination. It's not just gamers who flinch at the word umbrella. The term T-virus pops up in headlines, Halloween costumes, and marketing campaigns from Tokyo to Toronto. Some parents might not know the difference between a PlayStation and a bread box, but they'll still recognize the blue and white logo or the sight of a shambling corpse in a torn lab coat. All of this started with a single idea. What if a virus could turn people into something unrecognizable? That question didn't just launch a franchise, it rewired how we talk about pandemics, science, and even corporate greed. The T-virus isn't just a monster maker, it's the reason zombie apocalypse is a phrase everyone understands. And while the games play up the horror, the real story hiding behind the T-virus is stranger, darker, and a lot less predictable than anyone could have guessed. In December 1966, deep in a West African cavern, 3 men in white coats and muddy boots stared down at a flower that would change the world. Oswald E. Spencer, Edward Ashford, and Dr. James Marcus didn't just find any plant, they found the so-called Stairway to the Sun, a rare blossom that the Ndipaya Nudipaya people believed could grant kingship or death. The real secret was hidden in its cells, the progenitor virus, a microscopic wildcard that rewrote the rules of biology. Most who touched it died almost instantly, but the few who survived gained strength, intelligence, and sometimes a monstrous new form. Spencer saw opportunity. Why settle for a crown when you could play God? By 1967, the trio had formed Umbrella Corporation, a pharmaceutical company on paper, but in practice, a front for their experiments. Ashford, the aristocrat, dreamed of perfecting humanity. Marcus, the virologist, wanted to push the science as far as it could go, no matter the ethics. And Spencer, ever the schemer, had his eyes on power and profit. The partnership was uneasy from the start, and it didn't take long before Marcus and Spencer were at each other's throats, each convinced the other was holding back secrets. Marcus obsessed over the virus's potential, spending sleepless nights splicing genes and, at one point, fusing leeches with progenitor samples. His notes from 1977 read like a mad scientist's diary: failed subjects, accidental deaths, and the first hints of the T-virus. Meanwhile, Spencer poured money into hidden labs, convinced that with the right formula, he could sell immortality or unleash a new breed of weapon. Umbrella's labs became a breeding ground for rivalry, paranoia, and the kind of science that would make even Dr. Frankenstein raise an eyebrow. By the end of the decade, the company had moved from flower picking to full-scale viral engineering, and the world would never be the same. At exactly 2:37 a.m. on July 24, 1978, a red warning light began spinning in the Arklay Labs observation wing. By the time security teams reached the lower corridors, the first infected trainees had already turned on their colleagues. The T-virus worked fast. One moment, a young researcher was clutching his stomach, the next he was tearing at the nearest living thing with bloodied hands. Security logs from that night read like a horror novel. Panicked radio calls, orders to lock down the East Wing, and the desperate sound of gunfire echoing through concrete halls. Some guards tried to hold the doors, but the infection spread faster than anyone could track. Within minutes, test animals broke free from their cages, adding snarling chaos to the mix. Survivors described the air as thick with the stench of rot and burning chemicals, as containment protocols kicked in. With the facility in total lockdown, Umbrella's higher-ups issued a single directive: erase every trace. Nothing could leave those walls, not even the truth. Umbrella's public face never flinched. As bodies cooled in the Arklay corridors, the company's PR machine sprang into action, churning out a press release about a routine chemical spill. Internally, executives issued strict orders. No one spoke to the media, and any staff caught leaking details faced termination or worse. Security teams swept the facility for evidence, shredding reports, wiping surveillance tapes, and even threatening survivors into silence. Memos circulated with lines like, "Discuss only authorized information," and "Non-compliance will be prosecuted." For Umbrella, the real disaster wasn't the infection, it was the risk of exposure. Senior managers, some with military backgrounds, coordinated lockdowns and worked with select police contacts to keep curious reporters away from the site. The company's silence was absolute, enforced by fear and the promise of generous severance packages for those who played along. By the time the smoke cleared, the story was buried under layers of bureaucracy and intimidation. The outside world moved on, never realizing how close they'd come to catastrophe, and inside Umbrella, a dangerous precedent was set. Truth is expendable, so long as the company survives. William Birkin knew the walls were closing in long before the first gunshot echoed through his lab. For months, he had been perfecting the G-Virus, convinced it would secure his legacy and Umbrella's fortune. But on a rainy night in September 1998, Umbrella's own security team stormed his underground facility, guns drawn, orders clear: retrieve the virus, eliminate all resistance. Bleeding out on the cold tile, Birkin made a final, desperate choice. He jammed a syringe of his own creation into his chest, letting the G-Virus rip through his DNA. The transformation was instant and monstrous. Security logs from that night catch only fragments: gunfire, screams, then silence as Birkin, now unrecognizable, tore through the squad that betrayed him. In the chaos, shattered vials of T-Virus spilled into the sewer system, carried by rats and run off into Raccoon City's veins. Within hours, people began collapsing in the streets, hospital wards filled with fevered patients. By dawn, the city was a maze of locked doors, sirens, and the first hungry dead. One man's paranoia had become an urban apocalypse, and Umbrella's secrets were loose in the world. By sunrise on October 1st, 1998, Raccoon City no longer existed. The order came straight from the highest levels, one thermobaric missile launched with the stated purpose of sterilization. In minutes, a city of over 100,000 people was erased from the map, leaving behind only a radioactive crater and a cloud of unanswered questions. Official statements blamed the destruction on a last-ditch effort to contain a viral threat, but classified transcripts and declassified hearing records tell a different story. The chain of command stretched from the Pentagon to the White House, with most details redacted and key authorization codes still lost to time. Within weeks, UN field teams picked through the ashes, collecting soil and water samples that still tested positive for T-virus residues. Leaked reports confirmed what many feared: Operation Clean Slate hadn't wiped the slate clean at all. Shipping manifests surfaced, showing that samples of the virus had already slipped through the cracks, smuggled out by black market dealers and corrupt relief workers. Arms brokers in Eastern Europe and Asia began offering vials labeled T and G, fueling new outbreaks and a global panic that no missile could silence. The world's first bioweapon catastrophe had become a permanent threat, traded in back rooms and shadowy auctions, with every new variant carrying the risk of another city wiped from the map. In July 1978, internal Umbrella logs recorded the first T-virus breach, leading to trainee deaths and a company-wide cover-up labeled as a chemical spill. Decades later, the 1998 Raccoon City outbreak resulted in a government-ordered missile strike, as confirmed by official sterilization orders and UN investigation transcripts. While more than 200 pages of Umbrella's internal memos and research summaries have since been declassified, key details, like the full list of decision-makers behind Operation Clean Slate, remain sealed. What is clear from the evidence is that corporate ambition, secrecy, and the pursuit of bioweapons directly caused a humanitarian catastrophe. Even today, leaked shipping records show that viral research continues to pose global risks. As documented by the World Health Organization, international oversight for biohazards remains a work in progress. The story of the T-virus is a reminder: when science is used in secret, consequences can reach far beyond any lab.